This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 807, Rocking Out with Raksha. Enjoy. What would you say is the bare minimum that somebody would want for equipment on this?
Yeah, so it's certainly possible to get kills with pretty minimal setups. So we had a streamer get a kill with tier 70 weapons and void armor, which I would not recommend. That person who accomplished that is, arguably the best PVMer in the game, or right up there, top 5 or so. I think that it is possible to do with I think you could reasonably do it with strong perks on tier 80 power armor and tier 80 weapons, although I think that having a tier 90 main hand weapon is really going to be quite beneficial. I think it's certainly doable with tier 80, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this boss with tier 80 gear. I would kind of suggest doing other things to get the money for tier 90s. But I think tier 90 weapons, tier 80 armor is completely fine.
All right. And because this is a magic-based boss, you're going to want ranged. There is a patch note that is, I think, coming in next week that's going to even out the affinities to make melee on par with magic, but you're still going to prefer ranged for this. Would somebody who is aiming for a mid-range setup be out of their mind to try it with magic or melee at this point?
No, I think magic is totally fine. I think that either seismics or a noxious staff, either one, 4 ticking if you're used to it. If you're not, just one or the other. There's a lot going on in the fight.
Yeah,
I think magic is 100% fine. Ranged is better, not just because of the affinity. With tier 90 weapons, you're 100% accurate, so it doesn't, or at least it appears that you're 100% accurate. I've only done it with Zerk auras, so I'm not totally sure if that's true off of a Zerk aura. But really, I think magic is totally acceptable. The range is just so much stronger than magic in terms of DPM now because of backer mineral bolts that you'll find yourself getting much more effective kills with ascensions as opposed to seismics or a noxious staff. But there's really no difficulty that using magic would present you. You're just going to get faster kills with ranged because ranged is just much stronger than magic right now.
All right. So would it be fair to say that a tier 80 weapon with good perks would be good enough, but you really want something in the tier 90 ranged?
Yeah, I think a tier 80 is definitely doable. Like if you wanted to get your kill for Reaper Crew, for example, I think you'd have no problem getting one kill with the tier 80 weapon. But I think that if you are looking to really kind of camp the boss, I definitely recommend tier 90s. And if you look, tier 90s are relatively cheap.
Except Ascensions, staff. Right?
Right. Ascensions are way up, and we could talk about that in a bit. But a noxious staff is maybe 150 mil, which in this era of RuneScape is not super expensive, I don't think.
What about the Nox bow?
A little cheaper, maybe 130 or so.
Would you use that?
135. No, I would not use a noxious bow.
All right. The reason I ask is I'm probing to see what you would use if you weren't going to, go for Serenic, because we know how much those are up.
Yeah, if I only had the budget for a single tier 90 weapon, I would choose a Nox staff. I just don't think the Nox bow is particularly good.
All right, but what if you wanted to use ranged and you didn't want to go for the Serenics? Or, sorry, the Ascensions.
The Ascensions? I would say a main hand Ascension crossbow and an offhand Chaotic crossbow would be the way to go. If you can't afford a main hand Ascension crossbow, make a little more money until you can, and then go do that.
Then otherwise use magic. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I think so.
All right,
so.
And then on the,
I mean, that's not super effective, but I think yeah, that's my feeling on it.
All right, and then on the armor front, you said tier 80 power armor with perks at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And then probably tier 90 power armor would be the recommended, like, what is that, Serenic?
Yeah, or tier Tier 92 is cheaper to use over time, but a bigger upfront cost. We talked about this a lot on the monthly bit for those interested in hearing more. But I think Tier 80 power armor with strong perks, and these days, because of archaeology, strong perks are incredibly cheap to acquire.
Yeah, what was the percent
Tier 80
difference
power armor
between the old meta before archaeology and the new meta after archaeology with the ancient gizmos?
The new budget meta is significantly stronger than the old max money meta. So the old meta, which was several billion worth of perks, is a significant downgrade compared to the new meta of cheap perks that are maybe 20 mil in total.
That's cheap. That's cheap when it comes to combat. 20 mil for good perks.
Yeah, and you could have pretty excellent perk setup for under 40 mil for an entire style
and
top bottom.
Remind me what that would be. It would be aftershock.
Yeah, so you're looking at those are expensive. Okay. So you're looking at Precise 6 and Equilibrium 4, which are both
P6 E4, right? Okay.
Yeah, so a P6 and an E4, a P6 on one weapon and E4 on the other, or on a two-handed weapon, you both on the same. And then for your armor, it's really cheap to get Biting 3 these days. There's a kind of trick you have to do to lower your invention level if you're 120 invention.
Oh, really?
It's just how it works. Yeah, it's a higher percent chance at a lower invention level, which is kind of funny. But you could get Biting 3 relatively cheaply. Impatient 4 is quite cheap. You can get it with Zero's components, which are not too bad. And Enhanced Devoted 4, also super cheap, not more than $1 mil or $2 mil. And then Crackling 4, which is maybe 100K or so.
That's the one that provides lightning damage, right?
Yeah, and if you want to spend a little more, you could get the Relentless 5 Crackling 4 combo, and I think those are about 15 mil a perk if you get an average. It's about 1 in 20 chance, so if you maintain that 1 in 20 chance, it's about 15 mil for that perk, which you could use or not use. I definitely don't think it's necessary at Raksha. I definitely think it's worth doing if you've got 15 mil to spend, which again is not a whole lot in the grander scheme of PVM costs.
All right.
So, David, I got a question.
Hang on, I just want to ask him about food and potions before you do that. Then you can ask that.
Okay.
What are you using for food? Sailfish, jellyfish?
Yes, I'm using Super Ceradomin brews in sailfish soup because I've got them. I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah,
I would not recommend that if you're using a yak. I'm using that because I'm using a Ripper Demon with a lot of spiritual prayer flasks just to spam the Ripper Demon spec for faster kills. If you're using a yak, I think that some regular Ceradomin brews and rocktails or sailfish, either one, is more than adequate. I even think that Ceradomin brews and sharks is probably totally fine. Because the thing about Raksha is if you don't make mistakes with your prayer flicking, you take almost no damage. And if you do make mistakes with prayer flicking, you're probably dead. So how much does the food help? It is hard to say. I mean, I really think that if you're using a yak, just filling a yak full of sharks or rocktails or something like that is totally fine.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's going to be a spectrum based on how good you are at that. And then I assume the best overload that you can either make or that you feel comfortable taking.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
The best overload you can make, yeah.
Right. Super prayer renewal potion? Yes, no, maybe so.
I use Elder Overload salves, so they come with a prayer renewal in them. But I don't really think the prayer renewal is necessary. I use spiritual prayer potions because
those boost your summoning
Demon,
points or restore your summoning points, right?
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yes, and prayer at the same time. If you're not using a Ripper Demon, if you're using a yak, then just good old super restores.
All right, Tanis, question.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, David, when you're going through those setups, I never heard you talk about any switches. So does that mean finally got a boss that switch escape is not necessary to put you
Well,
into that top tier?
There's not a single boss in the game that requires switch escape to kill. Now, there's a big spectrum of kill times. I would say our average players are getting between 7 and 8 minute kills. Couchy did a sub 2 minute and 30-second kill. So there's a wide variance in kill times based on how many switches you bring. So if you want to get into what the meta switches are, there are a ton.
Oh, so you actually can then do switching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I bring a Saren God bow. I'm gonna, once I can afford Greater Ricochet, I'll certainly be bringing a Karaming switch because that thing is obscenely powerful. But yeah, I mean, I definitely bring switches, but we were just talking about kind of the minimum setup.
Yeah, the minimum
for consistency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think we were getting to the kind of high end setups yet.
You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.